ready to get serious about building content sites and building a profitable business online? Welcome to the Niche Website Builders Podcast. We bring you the latest field-tested tips, tricks, and strategies for building a profitable online asset. We interview industry experts, share customer success stories, and reveal our own experiences working on hundreds of sites to inspire and motivate you to make something happen. Let's do this.
Welcome to the Niche Website Builder Show. In this episode, I speak to Tyler Bishop, the CMO of Ezoic. Ezoic is a platform for publishers to earn money from display ads on their site, powered by machine learning. Now, I know very little about how display ads work. I put a bit of code on my site, I get ads presented on my site, and I get a paycheck every month. But I know very little about how it works from the advertiser's point of view and how that bidding process goes on between the advertisers. So we're going into depth about how all that works behind the scenes. We speak about split testing ads, comparing advertising networks side by side, and we talk about the December Google Core update and the findings that Tyler made from analyzing thousands of client sites. I hope you enjoyed the episode.
This episode is brought to you by Niche Website Builders, an agency dedicated to helping people just like you build profitable content sites. Niche Website Builders are the hands-off content site marketing agency you always wished existed. It's run by content site marketers for content site marketers, and they help both investors and individuals alike build profitable online properties. They provide a fully outsourced approach to content creation, link building, and done-for-you website builds, the same approach they use on their own six-figure portfolios. For example, their content packages come with a proprietary keyword research process, are written by in-house native English speakers, formatted using templates proven to convert, and uploaded to WordPress with affiliate links added so that all you need to do is hit the publish button. Check them out at nichewebsite.builders/show. That's nichewebsite.builders/show and fill out the form to get coupon codes for 10% more content or a 10% discount on links with your first order sent right to your inbox.
Welcome to the Niche Website Builders Show. Today, we're going to be talking to Tyler Bishop from Ezoic. Tyler is the CMO at Ezoic, who have been shaking up things in the advertising space with their AI-driven ad platform for a number of years now. Ezoic is an ad platform for publishers at heart, offering features from monetization, site speed, UX, and more. Welcome, Tyler.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Mark. It's good to talk to you again, and thanks for letting me join the show.
Cool. So thanks for taking time out of your day. Really appreciate that. Just to get started, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself and Ezoic?
Sure. So I guess I'll start with me because I think my story kind of comes into Ezoic quite nicely. I'm sort of an entrepreneur at heart. I would actually describe myself as a bit of a trailblazer. I like building new things. And one of the things that I did when I was in school, I went to university, graduated from high school here in the States when I was really young. And so I fell in love while I was in school, and I met a girl, and I decided I wanted to get married to this girl, but I couldn't. I couldn't get done with school fast enough. And luckily for me, I found a gentleman by the name of Louis Ray, who was a partner at Edward Jones, a financial firm here in the US. And he had some radical ideas around a company, and he decided he needed some young hotshot marketer. And I'd done some things at our local university that got me attention. Actually, I was the editor of our school paper. And so I had actually written a story about a project that I'd been involved with, just a personal business. And so I kind of hyped myself up a little bit. And he had reached out to me. And then from there, we didn't have any money to really market and, kind of promote our business. And so I was like, hey, at the time, search, Facebook, MySpace was just dying at the time. And I was like, hey, I think online I can really grow this thing. We don't need to do kind of traditional sales and things along those lines. So we grew that business, successfully exited it about 5 years later, started helping a lot of other local entrepreneurs build their businesses, and eventually wound up working for a very, very large software company, managing a team of 60 people globally, and I hated it. Did not like it. Like I said, I really like building something from scratch and being part of something new. And around that time, I had gotten in touch with Dwayne LaFleur, who Dwayne is the CEO of Ezoic, and his story is a really interesting one as well. I won't go too deep into it, but he basically was the innovator of exchanging real currency, fiat currency, for digital currency online to exchange for things like tractors and things like that on games. And he had a revelation along the way that basically everybody in the industry, the ad industry specifically, was focused on the wrong thing. They were all worried about ad targeting. They weren't really worried about how ad buyers and users interacted with ads and the impact that that had on revenue. And so in getting in touch with him, I decided that this was something that I was very interested in pioneering. And fast forward, half a decade later or more. And Ezoic is a brand now. And that was something I never thought that I would be able to build, but it's a credit to our customers and a credit to our technology. And Ezoic is essentially a platform for publishers that allows them to, digital publishing has got more complex. We provide technology that does a lot of things. I think everybody knows this as someone that provides ads or some form of monetization. But really, our goal in all of that was trying to take something that was very difficult for people to do, a sophisticated ad op setup, and then try to make it as self-serve and easy and approachable for all publishers as possible. And that's the core of what we do and what we're working on every day at Ezoic.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, definitely going to dive deeper into some of those things around the user experience and kind of the tools that Ezoic provide for publishers. But before we get into that, good to know the Tyler outside of work, outside of Ezoic. What kind of things do you get up to outside of work? We mentioned just before the call, although we didn't go into any detail, that you've been broadcasting for a little while, and for personal life as well as for business. So yeah, tell us a little bit about outside of work.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start by saying that my father he's what I would describe as a storyteller, and I think that that's something that he's passed on to me, and I've expressed that in a lot of different parts of my life, not necessarily always on purpose either. And you mentioned the broadcast thing. I'm a bit of a Renaissance man. I'm a wedding officiant, so I have 4 different couples, mostly just friends that I've done their wedding ceremonies and things along those lines. I've been a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for about 6 years. I've been training for about 15. And my wife is one of the top female Jiu-Jitsu competitors now, and one of the most accomplished Americans ever. And so they do broadcasts online for all the world championships and things like that. And I started basically doing those broadcasts for all the different networks and things like that would show it. And I started doing that early on, and eventually it became like a gig. And then I translated that into my personal life as well. We host events around the world at Google offices, something that I partnered with Google to start building called Pubtelligence. And so, yeah, I found a lot of different ways to let people get in front of people and have them listen to me. And in doing so, I find ways to exercise other fun things. Like I'm an amateur magician. I'm not a good one, but I've forced people at some of these events to patronize me and my fantasies as a little boy as being a magician. And so I've done a little bit of magic at some of these shows as well, although I'm not sure the audience really was into it as much as I was. And I think if you look at my life, it's got a lot of really very different interests, but I think that that's one of the things that I really like is I like being able to have expertise. I really like learning, and I would say it's my core competency. And so, any new challenge that requires a lot of learning, a lot of hard work, those are my favorite things. And jiu-jitsu, broadcasting, marketing, publishing. I'm a publisher myself as well. We're talking about podcasts before the show. It's a lot of really interesting things that I've been involved with, and I'm probably leaving out a dozen more.
Cool. Very good. Okay, so on to a little bit about Ezoic then. So yeah, I mean, we've already covered kind of like some of the stuff you've done before Ezoic. Sounds like you've known yourself as an entrepreneur from day one. So yeah, a little bit about Ezoic then. So I must admit that I know absolutely nothing about how display ads work behind the scenes. The extent of my knowledge is I'll add some code to my site, ads appear. I don't know how they get there, but they do, and they make me money, and I receive a check every month, and that's my extent. So I'm going to ask a lot of stupid questions over the next, over the course of this interview. So pull me up on any stupid questions or any terms that I've used that are incorrect. So you can correct it for the audience. But yeah, I think I'm not alone. Essentially, though, when it comes to this, I think there's a lot of people that will put ads onto a site. They don't really know how they get there. They don't really know anything, how it's working behind the scenes. And I think, for me, I'm interested to know this. So I think, I'll ask you a lot of dumb questions, and we'll dive into the detail as we go.
Yeah, no, I think you're right on the point there in terms of thinking of it in terms of like, I don't think that you're alone in that. And in fact, we've seen even the U.S. Congress and the EU government regulators have a lot of quote unquote stupid questions for a lot of the major parties here that are involved in this. So I think it's probably a good topic to get into.
Cool. All right, let's take it from the top then, really broad. So how do ads end up showing on my site? Like where do they come from?
That's a great question. And, kind of just jokingly and tongue in cheek, I'll say there's a lot of people that would like answers to those questions. And it seems like we're, a decade removed from when people started really having them. And I'm not sure that anyone can give you great answers in terms of transparency in the chain of command there. And the reason why I mention that is because one of the things that we see fundamentally is that there are a lot of hands in the pot between advertisers and publishers. And the more that there are, as you can imagine with anything else, the more parties that sit in between a dollar from being paid and a dollar being sold, I guess, is that essentially a lot of different hands have the ability to kind of just take a little bit off the top. And that's something that I think publishers have had to deal with for a really long time. And part of it's because the expertise that's needed to implement a sophisticated ad ops setup or something along those lines requires either, a team of experts or to outsource or something along those lines. But if you look across the web today, the vast majority of programmatic display ads are coming from who you might expect, not names that are going to sound unfamiliar. Google, Amazon, Facebook. These are some of the major players, but Google in particular, if you go and you hover over an ad on any of your favorite media sites or news sites, you're going to see something that says ad double click or Google Ad Services. And that means the ad is being served out of Google Ad Manager. And Google Ad Manager is essentially a tool that's used both by advertisers and publishers. Agencies use it a lot. Publishers that are larger in scale will often use it. And it basically is a tool for implementing ads on your site. You can sell ads directly, meaning like Reebok could come along and give me money, and then I could actually take those ads, put them into my own ad manager and serve them. But the vast majority of ads that you see coming out of Ad Manager come from what's called Google's Ad Exchange. And Google's Ad Exchange is a little bit like a Wall Street trading floor. So if you go back to the very start, you have an ad network. An ad network essentially does one job. It takes money from an advertiser, says we've got a network of publishers or websites that are willing to show our ads, and we will do real-time bidding. And if your bid is the best, Mr. Advertiser, we'll show your ad to the visitors that you're targeting on those respective sites. Ad networks can't be trusted. This is something we know throughout history. And so the point of an ad exchange is for an advertiser to give $1 to basically, you throw it on the floor and you say, hey, all ad networks, who can give me the best bid for this? They all kind of bid. And then whatever sites are connected to the same ad exchange, those networks will then win those bids within the exchange. So you're talking about thousands of ad networks all inside of Google's ad exchange competing. And that is where the vast majority of ads that you see on major sites coming from. There are ad networks that have a large footprint beyond that. So smaller publishers will be very familiar with AdSense. It's the largest ad network in the world. It's Google's as well. It does not leverage their ad exchange inventory, but it does use a lot of other display inventory that they have. Advertisers will use things like Google Ads, formerly AdWords, to buy ads, and some of that will show through AdSense as well. And so AdSense is a little bit more simplified than something like Ad Exchange or Ad Manager. In fact, most websites on their own probably are not going to get access to their own Ad Manager account. And so these are the kind of complexities that live there. And then there's all these native ad providers that you'll never believe what she did, next around the web, widgets that live on sites. And then you have, this complexity that people call header bidding, which is basically a way to kind of hold Google accountable to the bids that are served up through Ad Exchange. So it gets very complex very quickly. But to answer the fundamental question, where do the ads come from? Your best bet is any ad you see, it's coming from Google.
Cool. Okay. So if I'm not a publisher, if I'm an advertiser, like how granular can I get in terms of, can I choose my placements? Can I choose individual sites? Can I choose individual groups of sites? Like what choice do I have as an advertiser rather than a publisher? Yeah.
So I think that this has ramifications for both parties, but advertisers have a lot more data clearly have a lot more data than what publishers typically have and use. And what I mean by that is, as an advertiser, I can, at least for now, I can put a cookie on my website. Someone can come and visit my website, and I will be able to then target that person later on. But beyond that, I might say, look, I only want to target this person if they're on mobile and they're coming from Google search and it's this time of day, and I only want the ad at the top of the page, and I only want it if it's a 300 by 250. I can say all those things as an advertiser and even get more granular and say, well, I'm only willing to show this certain visitor an ad 5 times a day. I don't want to burn up my budget on one person or something like that. So as an advertiser, you have incredibly granular control of who you would target with an ad. And let's say because of that granular control, I'm selling something that's a high value product, or my campaign is what I would say is high value. So for me to show you that ad, the outcome that I would expect at volume is worth me bidding, maybe $500 a day just to target that person 5 times. And so when I look at something like that as a publisher, am I extracting or taking advantage of the fact that that advertiser is willing to pay a premium for that particular visitor? And typically publishers are not exerting that kind of control or even making those types of decisions on a per visitor basis to know when a valuable visitor is visiting versus one that maybe just isn't quite as valuable. And I think publishers think of it in terms of traffic source, but it's so much more vast than that. And as somebody that's run a lot of advertising campaigns over the years, there's all these other things that you do that are best practices, like blacklisting sites, whitelisting particular sites. So I might say, I only want to target, sites in the Alexa top 500, or I don't want to target these sites that I've seen my ads show on before and the viewability is 0%, or I got 100,000 ad impressions on this website, but not a single click. So they must be showing in weird places that people aren't really seeing them or something like that. So as an advertiser, you have a lot of control.
Okay. And an advertiser uses Ad Exchange as well? Google Ad Exchange?
So that's where their ads are being basically, like I might come in as an advertiser, depends on what product I'm using. But if we look at Google Ads, I'm going to probably use, the basic AdWords interface. Used to be AdWords. Google Ads is such a terrible brand name for it. But you can put your programmatic ads in there, and those will show through AdSense, sometimes through Ad Exchange as well. Right. The videos are served through there as well. And then Google Ad Manager, I can use that on my side as well. And I can get really, really granular with it. But with Google's Ad Exchange, not only can I buy inventory on websites across the web, but I can buy TV ads and things like that because of innovations like YouTube TV and things along those lines. So as an advertiser, I'm probably using Google Ads or Google Ad Manager. The bigger brands are in many cases using agencies that are also using Google Ad Manager. So it's a lot of Google in the chain here.
Okay, that kind of makes sense. So, well, we'll play on this point just one last bit, so I can kind of finally get that thread together. So, as a publisher, as an advertiser, I've made these I've specified that I only want it to show on mobile, only at the top, all of these kind of criteria, and then you've got the ad networks, like somewhere in between, like. Where do they come in? Like, who picks it? How can they pick that up? Does the advertiser have a choice about the ad networks that pick it up? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, it's a great question. And so I always liken it to this. So I mentioned all the parties in the chain, and part of the reason why I think it's good to start to filter those out and to eliminate as many as possible is because there's so few in there that are adding a lot of value. There's a very small amount that are adding incremental value. And then there's quite a few that are probably adding no value or just taking. And what that looks like is if I'm an advertiser, you can imagine, especially if I'm one with a limited budget, I'm probably going to use Google. It gives me the greatest scale of pretty much any ad product that I could use. And so if my ads aren't in Google, they're likely not going to be in a lot of other places unless there's some nefarious reason why I don't want to use Google ads. A lot of times scammers try to avoid that and things like that. So the idea that, you're going to work with some kind of ad network or, party that's going to bring a lot of what they call unique demand, meaning advertisers are, paying a premium or putting ads into an ad network that they basically wouldn't put into Google. It doesn't really make sense because if I want my ads to be shown, I'm going to put them into Google. I'm going to put my highest bid in because it's how I can target the most amount of sites, especially big ones or good ones or whatever I'm trying to reach. And I'm probably not going to throw a lot of other cash or even pay more for somebody that has less scale, maybe less access, maybe less information or data about my audience. So Google is really kind of like my number one there. Now, these other ad networks, they have inventory that they're getting from a lot of different places, and they have different ways that they try to buy and sell and build relationships. And so they connect essentially to Google Ad Manager, and they allow themselves to basically buy and sell. They're sort of like a stock trader in that respect, where it's like, I'm going to buy this commodity over here. It's a bunch of ads from, let's say, Coca-Cola. And now I'm going to then sell them, or I guess exchange them for the space for the publisher. So I'm going to pay out some of the cash and I'm going to keep some of it. And that's sort of how ad networks work. And the ad exchange is meant to be a fair playing field so that everybody is, held accountable. Now, it's arguable about how fair Google's playing field is. There's been, especially with the antitrust stuff that's come up recently in the US, people are taking a lot closer look and asking, is this really fair? And in some cases, are they giving preference to different parties for, reasons of anti-competition? And so header bidding is something that was an innovation probably 4 or 5 years ago that became popular because it essentially created a second auction in the header of a website prior to ads being served. And that allowed basically publishers to figure out, kind of like one last round. This is the bid I've got. Anybody else got anything? And bam, sold to the highest bidder. And Google has recently made some other changes in the way that their auction works that sort of made that a little bit less important or less applicable. And so those ad networks that were competing in ad exchange, many of them became what they call header bidders. So what someone says is like a header bidder, third party, it's basically just an ad network. And they change their names and faces a lot. And some of them do provide value, but, of the thousands that at Ezoic we've added into our stack over the years, we traditionally find that there's, a dozen or so that actually are providing meaningful value to publishers, and the rest are, just become a liability.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. I finally got it after all these years. So
it takes a while, and it's complex. And I think that's the thing that's difficult about it is you do have to choose in a lot of cases, what types of things do you really want to have a comprehensive understanding of? And this is one that is constantly changing. It's not easy to understand in many ways, not black and white. So it makes it difficult.
Yeah. Cool. So you often refer to Ezoic as being a platform as opposed to a network. Like a lot of people think of Ezoic as being a network, like some other networks that are out there, but that's not how you describe yourselves. So can you tell us what the difference is and why you describe yourself as a platform?
Sure. Yeah. I think the term ad network is probably applied to a lot of parties that are not, in the traditional sense, an ad network. And the reason is because I think an ad network in the most fundamental way is basically taking ads from advertisers and then, serving as basically a middleman between publishers and advertisers to provide some scale. And for us, we don't have any, like, you can't go on to Ezoic as an advertiser and just buy ads that you would want to sell to our publishers. We basically take in demand, quote unquote, from thousands of different places. So we automatically set up a header bidding auction on all of our publisher sites and start implementing the header bidders that we think are going to work the best. We also provide access to Google Ad Manager and Google's Ad Exchange. So this huge source of premium demand that's usually unavailable outside of that. And then you can connect any existing ad networks that you have a relationship with. So that includes AdSense, Media.net, Taboola, Outbrain, that sort of thing. You can connect all of those into Ezoic. So if you have an actual ad network that you're working with, it'll allow Ezoic to basically allow those to compete alongside all of our other networks and things like that. So that being said, we're not an ad network from that sense because we're basically leveraging all the ad networks that are meaningful to publishers. This is exactly what a seasoned ad ops professional is probably going to do if you hire someone to work on your site or something along those lines. And that was sort of the idea to begin with behind Ezoic being, quote unquote, a platform. Is we wanted to be something more of like a Salesforce or even like a I guess, for lack of a better term, like a Shopify, I guess, where if you want to basically set up a store yourself and sell things online as an e-commerce retailer, or you want to, set something up yourself and basically sell to customers, we want to be able to provide you the ability to sign up for Ezoic, implement a sophisticated ad op setup, which includes all the testing and things needed to do to actually increase your ad inventory over time. The process of actually getting advertisers to bid more takes a long time. Depending on how much traffic you have, it can be weeks to months, and it can be linear for a very long period of time if you do it correctly, but it requires lots of testing. And all of that makes you just kind of want to throw your hands up in the air unless basically somebody can do it for you. And I think that that's where a lot of, especially independent or smaller publishers, have gone over the years. Unfortunately, that's not always keeping your best interest in mind, and they don't always do a great job. And so we wanted to build technologies that allowed anyone to be able to do it themselves with very little need for support or third parties. And that's sort of where we've evolved over the years, is trying to make that easier and easier, more and more approachable. And we've added a lot of other things onto that over the years because we've kind of had to. Our customers needed it in the same way that ad ops is sophisticated and complex. So is a CDN has become that way. Having an SSL and making your site secure, circumventing and managing and dealing with all the different government regulations as it relates to user privacy, and being able to understand what your data says about your users, their engagement, site speed. These are all things that have, over the last decade, emerged as things that publishers have to be concerned about. And so we've added things into our platform to do the same thing with those elements as we've done with ads in the past, which is we don't want you to feel like you need to hire someone. We don't want you to feel like you need to outsource something. We want to try to make the things that are important to growing your business as a publisher easier and more accessible. And you can be as hands-on, I like to say, or as hands-off as you would like to be with those things. And I think that gives everyone the flexibility that they would want while also overcoming the complexity that's kind of emerging, and I don't expect to go away anytime soon. So I think that's one of the reasons why I think we're quite a bit different. And I always tell people we don't really have a true competitor.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. Okay. That makes sense. So yeah, I mean, you kind of alluded to it in that, if you've got a number of different, kind of think of the right terminology here, kind of if you've got like AdSense or media.net and all of those kind of guys involved, you can allow them to compete on your platform. And that's because you put some AI into your platform. Is that correct? Or essentially you're kind of A/B testing ads against each other and you're pitching them against each other. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and how that works? And have I got that right?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, yes. And I think that's the thing is AI and machine learning is something that's thrown around a lot. We actually use real machine learning since day one. We have a giant stable of engineers and data scientists that are working on this stuff. And I think when you hear AI, machine learning, a lot of times what people really mean is algorithms. Now, an algorithm, it can be very, very sophisticated. If this, then that statements for, as long as you want to write them. The problem is it inherently encodes bias into things. So if I am I know a lot about ads, so I know that the sidebar generally when someone is coming from the US earns more money than top of the page ad. So show one in the sidebar versus one at the top. Well, that may be generally true, but what about when it's raining outside in Philadelphia? Well, maybe it changes. And you might go, that doesn't, that's such an edge case. Well, maybe, but the truth is that's data that you can see, and machines see everything. And so machines basically write the algorithm for you. And that's the difference between really machine learning and algorithmically driven optimization. And the reason why that's so important at Ezoic is, you mentioned media.net and AdSense. So if we go back in time, the way that ad ops was done, if you wanted to optimize kind of the ad revenue on your site, you would get a handful of ad networks that were reaching out to you. Let's say media.net and AdSense. I've got them both. I'm going to put 3 ads on the page, one at the top, one in the sidebar, and one at the bottom. And I'm going to go all AdSense. And then a week later, I'm going to go all media.net. And even though it's not apples to apples because it's not the same traffic, seasonality is different, maybe I come away thinking, well, AdSense was better, but it looks like on the sidebar, media.net was making more. So I throw media.net in the sidebar. Maybe I make more money off of that combination. So there was a lot of testing done to figure out which networks go where. The problem with that is the networks will do weird things like only bid on certain visitors certain ways, meaning they may show that they have a really high CPM, but it's because that ad that you put in the sidebar, they actually won't even fill it for visitors when they come from Germany, let's say. They just don't have any inventory there. So it artificially inflates the CPMs or RPMs that they serve. So to hold them accountable, then you have to start measuring things like fill rate. And so you're like, okay, well, I'll measure this. Eventually it got to the point to where when you started to have the advent of ad exchanges, you didn't have to worry about which network was going to go in which spot because the bidding process, the competition would sort of work that out for you. Great, that's already solved. So now I don't have to figure out which network should go in which different spot on my site. But now I still have those 3 spots, let's say, top of the page, sidebar, bottom of the page, ad exchanges, figuring out between all the Googles, the media.nets, the 33 acrosses out there, all the ad networks, and it's figuring out which ones are going to bid the most. The problem then becomes, though, what happens whenever one of the ads on the page is actually causing advertisers to bid less? this is exactly where AI comes in. I think people think of Ezoic as always optimizing for user experience, which it does. And you can actually increase how that works. You can set it to where you want to take care of the user experience first and foremost. But primarily, we're trying to find that balance of the ads are not forcing the visitor to end a session early or visit fewer pages or anything like that, which can extend a visit and hopefully show them more ads and you can make more money. But even if that's not the case, those 3 ads on the page, let's say you and I both come and visit the same website, we're going to have different advertisers bidding different amounts for both of us. We've talked about that granularity in the beginning. So it's a matter of supply and demand. So if the demand from me, meaning lots of advertisers are willing to spend lots of money on me, those 3 ads may have a lot of competition. And so if you remove one of them, the competition gets even higher because of scarcity. Now, the day that you remove that ad, you'll probably make less total money from all the ads on the page because there's one less. Those advertisers are basing their bids on historical data. So historically, they could bid, let's say, $5 and appear on the page. Well, now there's only 2 ads, so $5 doesn't cut it. So rather than making $15 from all 3 ads on the page, now I make 10. But tomorrow, those advertisers are like, I need to get on that page because I missed out last time I bid $5. So this time they bid 10. And it requires $10 now to get on the page because there's only 2 ads. And now I'm making $20 from fewer ads. Now, that's if the visitor is high value. Let's say we test that now with you coming to the same page. You remove the same ad. Advertisers don't care. They're all pretty much bidding the same amount anyways. They're not increasing their bids. So for you, for example, the publisher might say via that test, we're going to keep 3 ads on the page because they're not diluting each other or eliminating an opportunity. So for one visitor, we've increased the average earnings. For another, we didn't via that same test, but we can try other things. We can try moving the ads around and see if advertisers bid differently then. We can change the ad sizes. So there's all these different things that change the way an advertiser bids. There's things that the publisher controls, like ad size, ad density, ad location. And then there's the things that they can't control, which is basically who's visiting the site. Somebody from India, somebody from Canada, somebody from the United States. What device are they on? Where were they before? What advertiser websites were they visiting prior? Were they looking at a Mercedes-Benz or were they looking at, bubblegum? Those 2 things are probably going to get bid on slightly differently if the advertiser feels like they could sell them something. So Ezoic's AI is essentially working out all of those elements in real time every time someone visits the site. And it's that sophisticated testing that really makes us different. The ad demand from what we provide compared to pretty much anything else out there on the web that you would outsource or hire someone to do and implement on your site is the exact same. We're within percentage points of differences there. So the real difference is really the variables and the testing done by the AI.
Okay. That makes sense. That's scary though. How do you know what I was searching for before I came to how do you know I was looking at bubblegum before I came to the site?
Well, that's Google, they're pretty good at that. And while Apple and Facebook and many of the others have done their best to try to lock them out over the years, we are hearing about the quote unquote death of the cookie. But realistically, all the solutions that are appearing out here are essentially like, how do we do the same thing we're doing with cookies now without cookies? And there's a lot of different, theories about what could be done and solutions proposed. And Google will likely be the one that sort of kind of implements the one that they have the leverage to because they have such a strong position with Chrome browsers and their ad manager product. But realistically, the data that is used by Google and many others, it's why Gmail was free. It's why all of them built these really, really great platforms and offered them for free, is because they're essentially amassing massive amounts of user data, and that's what they use for ad targeting.
Yeah, makes sense. Cool. Okay, as an ad platform, kind of you offer a bunch of tools to Ezoic customers, and kind of one of those is the title tag tester, right? I've not tried it out myself yet, but I've kind of seen I've seen you kind of blogging about it and seeing some of the results. It's definitely something I want to try out. But yeah, for the people that haven't heard about that, can you tell us a little bit about that tool and some of the results you've seen?
Sure. So every year I do a survey and ask our customers, which are tens of thousands of customers, ask them, what are the things that are most important to you? Surprisingly, traffic is number one and revenue is number two. And they know that those two things are interconnected. And then so when you ask, what are your biggest concerns about traffic? What are the difficulties, challenges? SEO, Google search, those things are, at the top of the list. And we've always had a really, really high bar for things that we would build or recommend or even connect in terms of, search, because Google is, unless something's changed in the last couple minutes since we started this podcast, they haven't really shared a lot about how they rank websites and things like that in terms of complete transparency. Now, we know a lot just as an industry, and Google does share a lot of their best practices. It makes it very easy. But outside of that, most of the information related to SEO that people are acting on is subjective. And so it's not something that's provable. And so we've said for a long time, if we're going to work in terms of SEO, we want to be able to base things on objective data. So let's say you've got 500 backlinks or 1,000 backlinks, which is better? Is it good? Did you add a good one? Is that one harming your site in some way? It's very, very hard to measure. Now, one thing that's easy to measure is the impact of something like a title tag. So a title tag is basically something that lives on your site, and the header of it that basically says, this is the title of this page, this is what it's about. And Google uses that as like a headline in search results. So when you go and you scroll through the search results, the big blue text that appears, that's the title tag. The description underneath is the meta tag. Most websites will be familiar with that. And essentially that title tag, what it says, everything from the 5 best hats in 2020 to 2020's 5 best hats to the 5 best hats 2020, little dash, and then tylersite.com. Those are all different variations that are likely to generate different reactions from people that are inside of search results. So which of those 3 variations of my title tag are visitors clicking on the most? And the ones, once they do click on, are the results? Is one maybe getting a better click-through rate, but then people are bouncing because they're like, this is misleading? Or is there some title tag that maybe gets a lower click-through rate, but the people really find what they're looking for? So it's maybe a little bit more targeted at certain queries. And that's what Google is kind of trying to understand as well. Is like, what is that relationship between the user that's using the search function and then the website that they go to? Are they getting what they want? So bouncing might not be a bad thing, meaning they visit one page and leave, if it answers their question and they don't come back and search something else in Google. And so what we've learned is the ability to basically title tag test and have machines and data science applied to that. So everything from, how do we get Google to index a different title tag? How do we ensure that the same types of visitors are being measured against the same types of visitors in the previous title tag? How do we run something that's scientifically validated? That's something we spent over a year defining, building, and the end product is a tool that all the publishers that I've seen use it for any length of time have seen major improvements in Search Console data. So everything from CTR, as you would expect, because it's trying to pick the best one, but from impressions, average ranking position, and then clicks from search. So whether their rankings improve or not, which overwhelmingly we find that they sort of do, if you're getting more clicks and more users because they're finding a tag a little bit more descriptive or helpful, you're still getting more traffic to your site. And so for us, something that we can provide that's objective, that allows publishers to basically figure out, test, try new things to improve their SEO. It passed our bar, our very high bar for what we would build in terms of an SEO product. So it is one of the first ones that we have available, but it's free on the platform to all of our users. You can go into the SEO tab. You can test out on a single page, site-wide, all kinds of different variations, and we'll automatically test it for you and show you which one's the best. And if you want, we'll implement it for you automatically.
Okay, awesome. One of the things you can do as well on Ezoic is you can compare it to your existing ad networks and like side by side and do some testing. Yeah. So again, this is something else that I haven't tried yet, but yeah, can you tell us how that works and how it's kind of a scientific kind of measure? But also, I guess a question I have for you is, I think if I'm with another ad network, one of their stipulations is I'm not allowed to use it in conjunction with another ad platform, right, or another ad network. So, how do we get around that? And how does that work?
Yeah, so I would say it's in our DNA as a business, and I think one of my biggest challenges is really we're so publisher focused, and everything about the way that we built our technology was in the best interest of small independent publishers specifically, and that's why we built in the split testing, is because in our DNA is the proof. Even internally, there's not something that you can't take to the CEO or me and say, here's some data. I think that we need to change this. You're not going to see it's my priority or my prerogative to do something different. We're very flat in that way. And it's because our product was built largely in the same vein, where if you're a publisher and your sole goal is to make more money, and you have someone that says, over here, I will pay you the highest RPMs or something like that, is that a good thing? You'd think the highest RPMs would mean that you're going to make the most money. But it turns out RPMs, you can have higher RPMs and actually make less money off the same traffic. It's true. That's why EPMV, or earnings per thousand visitors, is a better metric, because it actually can't be manipulated in that way. There's some math behind it, but I swear I'll save everybody the trouble. The point is you want to be able to test that same traffic same day, meaning let's say it's Monday, January, I don't know, whatever yesterday was, the 18th or whatever.
18th.
The point is like when you test the traffic on that day, it's unique to that day, meaning advertisers are going to bid differently the next day, the next month, the next week on different types of visitors. So what you want to be able to do is say 50-50 on that day, people coming from Google in Germany, that are on a mobile device, like which solution or which setup do I have that is earning more money. And so we've allowed people to basically split test using our platform, to where you can connect to all of your existing ad networks and use Ezoic to mediate things. But if you previously had hired an ad ops person, or you're using, a single tag ad network, and you just want to see what's the difference, we'll show you apples to apples, same day, same visitors. Are you making more or less money? And you can see for yourself, and you can test any variance of that. You could give 80% of your traffic to Ezoic and 20% to your previous version or some version you're setting up, and vice versa. And we've always said the same thing. We don't lock publishers into contracts. It's 30 days free. After that, the service will pay for itself using a small ad at the bottom of the page. You can also pay a subscription cost if you choose, based on a percentage. And along the way, if you ever decide that you want to try something else, you don't have to remove Ezoic. You can actually see that Ezoic is performing better than whatever it is you want to try differently, because you can just send all the traffic that way. Now, if someone doesn't want you to test, if somebody doesn't want to be compared, what does that tell you? It's the same reason why we built it into the platform a long time ago. Is ad networks were doing this to publishers. They were manipulating bids and things like that to make it seem like they were earning more money when they weren't, because they weren't actually bidding on certain visitors. And so we find ourselves in the same position today, where people are locking folks into contracts, and then not only locking them into contracts that make them exclusive, but then they're saying to the publisher, you have to tell us before you leave, and you have to give us 30 days, 60 days, 90 days notice under the threat of penalty. So you're basically forcing someone to keep their ads on your site. And what is the exchange there? What is it that they're providing you that essentially gives them the right, or the gall to say to you, you can only use us, and under threat of having to pay us money, you can't remove us. And the answer is nothing. If you go and you look at any of these folks that are out there that are providing quote unquote like exclusive or premium or whatever they're like advertising these days, like the ads are being served from Google Ad Manager. That's a fact. Every single ad served from those third parties is served through Google Ad Manager. And the gross majority of the ads that are actually sold to the advertisers, that are the inventory that's sold on those pages, is coming from Google AdX, which every single one of them is going to make you apply to Ad Exchange to become a child account under their larger parent account. And that's going to give you access to Google AdX. So anybody that joins or uses any of these third parties or anything like that, including Ezoic, you're going to almost always see this giant jump in revenue just from the standpoint of getting access to Google AdX is a huge benefit. From there, the header bidders and things like that are adding some incremental value. There are direct deals that happen. So Dove Soap might do a direct deal with someone, and that might get served on a small number of home and gardening sites or something like that. But that is something that every single one of these parties is doing as well, including Ezoic. We have teams that go out and do these things. So there's nothing unique. And I think that that's one of the really core things that people need to understand about both Ezoic and a lot of these other parties out there. There's a reason why they want to be exclusive, and it's because they don't want to be compared, because it's a commodity. And that's why we built a platform, is so that you didn't need basically a gatekeeper to get access to these things.
Okay. So, I mean, if all the ads are coming from the same place, right? We've spoken about like where Ezoic kind of adds value, but like in terms of the other ad networks, is there any difference between them? Because, different ad networks, they kind of make themselves at least seem a little bit more premium because they require like a higher number of sessions to kind of work with them, like 50,000 or 100,000 sessions per month, for example, to actually to get is the bar they have, which kind of makes them seem like more premium. You're getting something better at that point. Like, if all the ads are coming from the same place, is it just the same, whoever you go with? What's the difference there?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's something that I think we've been trying to do some education with just different folks or partners around, because I want to be able to show more and more of this. And we've published some studies recently that really highlight just how all these things are the same, and that basically someone that is using Ezoic can make more money, and especially more money over time than all of these third parties. And the issue here is, again, the language. So like most of the third parties that I think you're describing is like marketing themselves as premium, having like page view limits before like they'll just do it all for you. Those are what I would describe as ad ops shops. So they're outsourcing ad ops to just different parties. They're all a little bit different in the way that they're made up, but that's the vast majority of them. Actual ad networks like header bidders, like a Pubmatic or someone like that. The difference between them and others is they have, their own proprietary algorithms and things like that for buying and selling to try to extract the greatest amount of money from an advertiser, either inside of an exchange or in header bidding. And, those parties you can connect to Ezoic and are largely probably already included, and they're providing some incremental value. If you go and you look at, reports inside of Ezoic's big data analytics, you can kind of see a breakdown of those things. So you're talking about like the individual ad networks that bid inside of Ezoic outside of the exchanges, adding, 1% or 2% of your overall revenue max. And it's this way even for all those other third parties that are out there, but they won't show you that. They don't give you that information. And so there's that mystery there. Once again, this asymmetry of data. They're not letting you see this. They're not letting you compare. And so what's happening is you outsource to one of these third parties. They say, 50,000, 100,000, a million page views or whatever. And they make it seem like it's more premium. Like once you get there, this is what all the quote unquote big sites use. Well, you can use a tool called BuiltWith to see what technologies sites use across the web. Far more quote unquote big sites use Ezoic than any of these third parties, because in reality, if you're a larger site, you really don't want to hand off, all of that data, all of that to basically somebody else to do. You'd rather have some control, and that's where a platform or technology comes into play. So like a Cosmopolitan, somebody that's used Ezoic technology on their website, they're never going to outsource to one of those parties or something like that. So the page use thing is twofold kind of genius on their part, because number one, you're right, it gives them this allure of seeming exclusive, but on the other side, it also is a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if you're a site with 1,000 visitors a month, or 10,000 visitors a month, or 15,000 visitors a month, you don't have a lot of historical data. You don't have a large audience. And so advertisers are not probably competing the same way for your inventory as they would be for a Mashable.com, where it's got an established audience. There's probably a little bit more competition. There's more audience variance, meaning there's more different types of people on different devices visiting. And so some of those are super, super high value. You can kind of cash in on the scale of it. And so as that historical data builds up over time, there's different ways that you can kind of use that to increase bids and things along those lines. So if someone starts using Ezoic and they've got 10,000 visitors or 10,000 views, the bidders, the historical data there, they're going to just naturally make more money in, let's say, a year from now, and they're getting 50,000 visits or views or whatever. So they're already going to be making more money as they grow. So if someone comes along and is like, congratulations, you're now qualified for my, ad op shop, Tyler's ad op shop, you come and all of a sudden, you start using my service, and maybe, because I don't have to be overly transparent, maybe I throw a couple extra bucks your way just to get started. So you're like, wow, look at my revenue really jump up. You're not getting any real reports about this. And then, you're naturally making more money as you go because you're growing. So they're taking advantage of the fact that there's this hard work that's been done by you to grow your site. It's already been optimized maybe over time by someone like Ezoic, who's been already implementing these, exchanges and header bidders and things like that along the way. And so been growing the value of your inventory. And then if someone comes in and throws just a bunch of ads on the page, they can really clean up in terms of volume. And, again, not a lot of transparency on where that revenue is coming from and things like that as well. So how do you know that they're not taking a loss in that first 30 days to lock you in or something like that? You don't.
Cool. Well, now I'm suspicious. Okay, so one of there's a really cool page on your site, which is the ad revenue index page, which shows how kind of ad revenue has increased kind of over time, and from my perspective, using ads on sites is just kind of getting better and better. Like, you're earning more and more money from ads. Like, it's becoming an ever increasingly viable option for kind of monetizing a site. And certainly myself and Adam are kind of looking to build sites with more informational content, because that's easier to rank generally than kind of like money content. And I'm monetizing through ads as well. And that's something we're talking a lot more with our customers about, having a larger share of informational content on the site so they can monetize it through ads. But so, I mean, that ad revenue index is kind of looks nice. It's going left to right over time. Even a pandemic couldn't affect it, right? Or in fact, if anything, it helped it. And I mean, where do you see that going? I mean, I assume that graph is more than just inflation. It's kind of it's growing faster than that. So, like, what's your view on that, and kind of where do you see it going? Is it a never-ending bottom left to top right graph, or what?
Yeah, I'm an ad revenue bull. So to borrow from the stock market terms, I'm very bullish on the future of digital ad revenue, and specifically the ad revenue index is measuring the amount of money that publishers are paid from advertisers. So digitally, via programmatic display. And yeah, we can see since 2015, 2016, it's been pretty linear progression. It actually does mirror the NASDAQ. So it's like a fun thing that I've been able to see over time is, we can look at 2020 and see that, the drop in the stock market and ad rates in March and April, but then, kind of a surge or a boom after the fact. And largely that's because digital is becoming you see all the e-marketer reports and things like that are, predicting, just year over year growth. More and more advertisers are taking money out of traditional mechanisms like television, print, outdoor, and they're putting it into digital. And the pandemic, in a lot of ways, has created an acceleration in that growth, because if you think about it, as a retailer, maybe now the majority of my product sales are online, or even just businesses that weren't really, reliant on online, sales or user experiences, or, they're connecting to their audience. Now they do. And so if you're thinking about advertising, you go, well, I probably, because of this digital relationship that I'm building, or, had to build as a result of these things, like it makes more sense for me to put more of my marketing or advertising dollars into the digital means. Now, the ad revenue index is one of many ways that we try to share lots of the data that we've accumulated over the years with people to be helpful. I noticed 3 or 4 years ago in online forums across the web, people are always asking, is revenue down today, or is it just me? People would always wonder, like, why did revenue drop so hard in January this year? And I kind of notice this every year, but this year it seems worse. Is it worse for everybody? And that was something that I would see a lot of, basically kind of misinformation spread, where you'd be one place and people would be like, oh yeah, ad rates have been going down for years. And I go, well, that's not true. Or yeah, this January ad rates dropped way worse than last January. And I'd look at it and be like, no, not on the whole. And it's because on individual sites, it's very hard to parse through some of this. And there's all kinds of other things like, did you grow your traffic, but is the traffic quality maybe not as good as it was before? And so now you're seeing less overall, like less higher rates, but maybe more revenue overall. And when do you notice that the most? In January this year, you maybe are a larger site, so a 20% drop is more money total, but 20% of, the amount of money that you made this year versus last year, it's still the same 20%, it's just more money as you get larger and make more. And so the ad revenue index allows people to kind of see through a lot of that and just see, like, on the whole, how is seasonality, how are, annual, monthly, even daily trends apply to your site. So did you do something that had caused your site to make less money over a course of time than, other sites? And this gives you the ability to kind of look and see.
Cool. Very good. In Ezoic, on the platform, you have you store you store an incredible amount of data in your big data analytics that you already spoke about. Like, it's vast. there's just so much there. So, I mean, what are your customers using that data for most, in terms of kind of optimizing their ads, essentially?
Yeah. So big data analytics is something that's sort of like a principal product for us in a lot of ways. So is it our most popular product? No, but realistically, anytime I have a chance to demo it or show it to a publisher, the data is in there, because I think everybody thinks, well, I have Google Analytics. Google Analytics is the gold standard for all analytics. It's like anytime you see somebody building like a customer analytics application or a big data analytics application for manufacturing, they always compare it to Google Analytics because it's such an easy, well-known one. That said, there's a lot of data that is inside of Google Analytics. It's not really built for publishers. It's built for it's built for all kinds of stuff. Big data analytics was built just for publishers. So you can see things like which of your authors is creating the most valuable content, the most engaging content, which ones are producing the highest RPMs, EPMVs, what page view counts are creating the greatest engagement, which ones are earning you the most money. How is site speed impacting user experience on different pages? What changes are making? What landing pages are actually earning you the most money? Funny enough, like if someone visits a high RPM page, but then leaves, but then visits a lower RPM page, but maybe visits 5 pages after that, traditionally you might think, well, that high RPM page is where I should spend my time, optimizing or making more content like that one. When in reality, it's that page where people go on and then visit other pages on your site that maybe produce the highest value session. So maybe you should actually create more content like that. It's that kind of data and information I think makes it a lot easier for people to figure out, how do I create ROI for my content? We have publishers that use the author data to incentivize their writers. They pay them bonuses based on, the ones that produce the highest value ones. They also use it as a way of tiering or even paying their writers. I know publishers that have used the data to figure out basically how they want to monetize these different forms of traffic. So like, good example is maybe they make both affiliate revenue and also like ad revenue. And they'll find that, when someone comes from Google search, their ad revenue is really, really high. And their affiliate revenue is maybe not the best. So they can actually use Ezoic to eliminate the affiliate links or affiliate ads or whatever on the page that essentially is, displaying those whenever someone comes from Google search. So the ability to basically figure out like what is generating revenue and what isn't is really valuable. You can connect it to Search Console and see what actual queries generate the most revenue, so that you can actually combine some form of revenue data alongside your keyword research. And, we spend a lot of time figuring out what keywords we want to target for, organic traffic. But alongside that, are we looking at the amount of money that those queries are generating? And then are we going back and seeing, the time, energy, money that I spent on having someone write or create this content, am I getting it back? And if so, great. Like, how does it compare to others? And then if not, why? Is it the subject? Is it the category? These are all things you can kind of dig into in big data that you really can't with any other analytics application.
Yeah, that's so cool. So as a writer, then, you're saying some people like incentivizing their writers, in terms of the results they get, in terms of that. So as a writer, what influence do I have over that? How can I write? How would I change my writing to get better results and get that bonus?
Yeah, so it's more data that you can get inside of big data analytics. It sounds like I'm pitching it here, but realistically, this is what our publishers do. So they'll look at something like word count and say, look, our word count shows that pretty much and it's different. This is different for every site, by the way. Articles with 250 to 500 words are our lowest paying ones. Articles with 500 to 750 are second lowest paying. But then 750 to 1,000 are one of our highest paying. And in fact, all the different kind of buckets of, content link that we have out there after 1,000 aren't really that much higher than 750 to 1,000. So if you're going to write, there's really not much benefit of going over 1,000 words based on the data that we have here. And beyond even that, if we want to look at categories, we can see, using maybe fishing as example, when we write about fishing poles, we don't earn a very high page RPM. When we write about fishing locations, we do. And then here's, a whole bunch of other categories. So it gives you an idea of like the length of content to target, the categories to target. You can look at things like, is there video on the page? What other pages are interlinked and things like that. To pages that generally have a lot of, in-content links and stuff like that, they generate more page views per visit. And so you can basically allow your writers to kind of optimize the revenue for you by just giving them some of this data. And we've got a content section where you can look at a lot of different things that allow you to kind of just get a general feel for, how should you construct this content to generate the highest amount of revenue.
Very cool. Very cool. Okay, so just want to touch on the site speed accelerator. So that's another tool that you provide. You don't have to be a customer, am I right? Still for that to use that. So yeah, it'd be good to kind of summarize kind of what that tool does for anybody who uses it. But also just a question I see kind of coming up time and time again. You get the kind of two groups of people who love it, they've used it, it speeds up their site. They love it. And you get the groups of people that say, oh, Ezoic, they slow down our ads and then we have to pay them to speed the site back up.
I love that.
Slow down our site.
What a dirty,
and then,
greedy company.
So, hit me.
Yeah. So I'm not sure where that's come from. So I always take the blame for it because I'm like, it's marketing, right? So the thing with the Site Speed Accelerator is, I guess we have to go back to the beginning and just highlight one thing, which is we're always fighting an uphill battle. And I told someone that I was interviewing for a position the other day, bring it on. Like our sole job in marketing at Ezoic is education, trying to help publishers, especially smaller independent ones, trying to give them information, because ultimately we think that our platform is designed to give people control so that they can do these things themselves. They're not outsourcing, and it gives them, the trajectory, the growth, the development of their business. It's in their hands. But there's a lot that they probably need to understand to see that value. Otherwise, they might not even trust themselves to be able to do this stuff. Now, that means that we're a lot of people's first introduction in a lot of cases to ads, and more specifically, a sophisticated ad op setup. So, we were talking early on in the show about Ad Manager and Google's Ad Exchange and header bidding and, waiting for the bids to come in. Waiting. Advertisers produce things like bid latency and stuff like that make paid, quote unquote, total page load times go up and things like that. Now, the ads not showing on a site aren't really that big of a deal in terms of like the user experience. They're just not. Now, if when the ad actually does show, it jerks the content and shoves it up and changes it around. I mean, we've all been on, pretty much every recipe site that I go to, I feel like I'm trying to just look at the ingredients, and the whole time it's jumping in and out of the viewport and stuff like that because the ads are moving the content around. That's not good. But if you can basically load all the content and allow someone to start reading, and then the ads show up as the bids come in and things like that, you can both optimize the revenue and the user experience for speed. Now, with that being said, all ads slow sites down because of the nature of this. And because we are people's first experience with ads, they're like, whoa, Ezoic is slowing down my site. Ads are slowing down your site. We'd love to just be able to serve ads instantly, but unfortunately, the nature of real-time bidding at this point is just not conducive to that. That said, most of the things that are slowing down publisher sites are unnecessary JavaScript, CSS, various frameworks. So you take a blank site, and this is an experiment we've done on our blog. If I take a blank HTML page and I upload that to a particular host, the host in of itself is going to affect my time to first byte, TTFB, a little bit. Maybe not a lot, but it's going to affect it a little bit. So if I've got a super fast, really good host, let's say I'm a 100 out of 100 on Tyler's speed scale. Now, because I want to, have a site that looks nice and built the way that I like, I'm going to make it a WordPress site. So I add the WordPress framework immediately, even just using WordPress out of the box theme. That site is, let's say I'm a 90 out of 100 or 95 out of 100, because that framework is naturally, it has to make a call, pull it up, and it's just going to take longer to load. There's some CSS in there that's going to take a minute to load as well. That's all well and good. But now I want to track my visitors, and I want to add a cool theme. So I add the Google Analytics script to my site. Inside of that script that you paste in the header of your website, you'll notice there's a URL, a www.google. And what that's doing is it's saying we need to call and then make a connection to this external URL or this external party for data tracking or data sharing. And because of that, that call is going to take, hopefully Google is pretty fast and they're going to respond quickly. But as you add more plugins and other stuff to your header, does Monster opt-in have the best delivery network in the world? Can you count on them to not have some kind of latency there? Probably not. Not all the time. So every piece of JavaScript that you add to the header of that site, whether it's through a plugin that's, adding a newsletter sign up in your sidebar or whatever, all that stuff is making an external call, and it's taking longer and longer to load your page. The more CSS is in your theme, the more customizations you make to your theme, where you say, I want to use these fonts, but I also want to load the bold text. Just by bolding the text inside of an article, you make the page load slower. So all of these things are making a site load a lot slower. What you can do to make it faster is, instead of having to call back to your host to get all this stuff, you can actually make a copy of it, and you can put that copy as close to the user as possible so they're not calling back to your host server. So if my site is hosted in New York and my visitor is coming from Los Angeles, you can use a CDN, which is basically takes a copy of your site and puts it on mirror servers all across the world. And so that visitor in Los Angeles is going to get the site from a server in Los Angeles, and this makes that faster. And you can also do things like browser caching. So if someone's visited a page before, it's saved to their device, so they can just get it instantly from their own device and not having to make any external server calls. But a cache is only as good as the cache rules. So if I'm that visitor in Los Angeles and I call to Los Angeles to get the site and it says you need a more up-to-date version of this site to actually view it, it's going to make me go all the way to New York. So having a CDN set up is very important. And the Site Speed Accelerator, our tool, is free. So I probably should have mentioned that first. There's this perception out there that we slow sites down, quote unquote, and make them pay to speed up. Not true. Number one, Ezoic doesn't slow down sites. Ads are partially probably to blame there, but it's also probably just your site in of itself. Despite all the plugins and things that someone might add to a WordPress site to try to make it faster, in most cases with Ezoic, you're making it slower because those plugins are trying to all kind of run their own play, if you will. I'll use a sports analogy. Generally, it doesn't go great if every player on the team is running a different play. It works better if everybody's on the same page. And when you have plugins that are, setting their own caching rules or optimizing and serving images from their cache, you basically create the exact same problem that you started with. And what Ezoic Site Speed Accelerator does, it allows people to do things like minifying HTML, serving images in next-gen formats, resizing images in the browser, eliminating render blocking JavaScript, delaying the scripts and deferring or lazy loading the ones that don't need to be loaded until a visitor actually needs them. Eliminating unnecessary CSS. If you're a desktop visitor, you don't need the mobile CSS code in the header of that page for that visitor. You can only, you should only serve the one that the person is going to need to actually view the site. So all of this is free through our Site Speed Accelerator tool to all Ezoic users. Now, we do have paid features on the Site Speed Accelerator that we've designed that are paid no matter where you go, whether you use a plugin or you use an external service. These are things that people charge for, but they're very bad at actually optimizing stuff when ads are in play. That's something we're really good at. So we actually just added these features and made them paid because there is a cost associated with them. We made them paid because we basically wanted to see publishers stop using external parties that were, they're paying money for services or technology that wasn't delivering. And we were like, we can do this. So we provided on top of our free product, and I'll emphasize that 90% of the product is free. There's 10% of tools that we use where machine learning is doing different types of script or ad related optimizations and caching and storage that you can pay to access and use. So our Site Speed Accelerator is, trying to help our customers with one of the things that we hear overwhelmingly they want to work on is site speed. Personally, I am not much of a believer in site speed being much of an important factor as long as your site is not slow. And I guess that's somewhat subjective, but realistically, it's something that we see overwhelmingly so. And so yeah, hopefully that answers the question, and probably more than what some people wanted to know.
No, absolutely. That's awesome. Next year we've, Google have already said that the, Core Web Vitals is going to be more of a ranking factor. Is that something that the Site Speed Accelerator is likely to help with at all, or is that something separate?
Yeah. So two caveats. I guess we'll start with the more hyperbolic one. So I think it's April 15th is like the target date for that for Google or whatever. I'll say this: our CEO has been sending me messages almost every day, like, tell people on April 15th, Core Web Vitals. Ezoic will kill it and will be the fastest way that anyone can serve ads, and also optimized for Core Web Vitals across the web, no matter what's used. So that's the product announcement, I guess, is that, we've got some things in store and things that we've been engineering for a while now that should help publishers with that quite a bit. Through our traditional site speed accelerator tool. But that being said, Google has said, and this, I've hosted events there, had members of their webmaster team, the people that are in charge there, making decisions, spoke with them at length, and had them present to publisher audiences before. And I can tell you exactly what they've said about this. Core Web Vitals and website speed are going to be included in an already formed user experience metric that is a small ranking factor. So it is going to be about 1/4 of a small ranking factor that already takes into account having an SSL, having your site as HTTPS, having your site as mobile friendly as well. These are things that I think publishers spend zero time thinking about now because it's pretty easy to do. But just being able to have a mobile site, have it served as secure, these are things that I think publishers are like, oh yeah, that's not really that big of a deal. It's probably not that big of a ranking factor if I have an SSL or my site's HTTPS. I'm just kind of doing that so my site doesn't show as non-secure in a Chrome browser. But realistically, those things are as much of a ranking factor as speed is. That's from Google's own mouth about this. So if you take into account that, I think we see a disproportionate amount of focus on site speed just in general. But that being said, we know that it's important to publishers, and so we've spent a significant amount of engineering on it. So to build real technology, to not cheat the tools or tell people to just not show ads on the first page so that they're happy that the page looks good in a page speed tool, but in reality, all it's doing is costing them money because Google does not look at speed that way. That's kind of my general thoughts on the Core Web Vitals.
Okay, cool. Well, we look forward to that day. See what happens on the web, huh? So, one last thing before we wrap up and kind of talk a little bit about the future of Ezoic. You did some analysis on the Google Core algorithm update in December. You got access to a lot of sites, so you were able to do some kind of big data analysis, I guess. So, I'd be interested to hear, from your own words. Kind of, I've read the blog post myself, but maybe everyone listening to this hasn't. So it'd be good to hear, what you found from the update.
Yeah, so I told you before this, I wanted to pull the data up so I could share it. We always do this after any time Google announces an actual update. There's always rumors. Is there a Google update? You really got to look through a lot of that because so much of it can be subjective. Who knows what's going on? I'm a believer that changes that Google makes in terms of how they display search engine results probably matter more than how they actually rank things in their index. Meaning, if all of a sudden they decide they're going to show a video carousel at the top of pages that are in regards to a product or something, that's more likely to affect someone's traffic than whether or not Google decided to rank their page 3 or 4 and how. But that being said, we always look at Search Console data after these announced ones. And what we saw from 12,000 plus sites, which is, it's a small sample size if you think of all Google search, but probably no one else is looking at that amount of publisher data. We look at by CMS system, integration type, speed, all that stuff. So across all those, what we saw is that the average Ezoic publisher saw an average of 18% more traffic, 19% more impressions in search results, and they increased their average rankings in CTR just slightly. So 1 to 2% in that area. And we generally, whenever we see all of our publishers benefit, we found that it seems like across the web, just in general, publishers benefit, but ours disproportionately see a larger one. Sounds like I'm saying Ezoic is pretty awesome and doing a better job. I do believe that, but I also think that it also speaks somewhat to our customers being more on the sophisticated end, kind of doing some of these things themselves. So I think we just have, in general, a cohort that's probably going to perform better than most. But if we look at the types of sites and how they benefited, so sites that were based in terms of that were article based. We saw about 33% improvement in terms of traffic, average rank about 2%. E-commerce sites actually saw average rank decrease. Forums or user generated content saw some of the greatest increases in search appearance, meaning impressions and clicks. And then online tools were something else that we noticed saw like big improvements in average ranking and both traffic and search appearance. And then if we look even deeper at like the categories there, I would say the winners look like things in the area of automotive, news, food and drink, the areas where we saw publishers probably see the biggest like net like not improvement. I think we see increases in traffic, but CTR and average rank are the only areas that they lost were health and entertainment. So we know that health is one of those kind of tricky ones where there's a lot of discussion and talk about what, is credible health information and things like that. Entertainment's another one where Google experiments a lot with the type of information they show a search result visitor. So I searched Seth Rogen recently because I wanted to see how old he was, and I got AMP actually had a story embedded. You click on it and it did like a story like you would see on an Instagram or social media app there inside of the search results. That's affecting publishers' traffic as well. And so overall, we saw publishers see a pretty good sized benefit from this. And we continue to hope that we'll be able to share more and more data like this that people find helpful.
Yeah, cool. Okay, thanks for that. So what's in store for Ezoic in 2021 and beyond?
So I think, you look at our mission, and as I said before, we've always seen ourselves as someone that is a friend of publishers. And I think one of the things, personal goal of mine is to really find ways to express that and share the stories of all of our customers, and really just how as a business, we've been able to help so many. And really, we see the vision for our company being one that empowers publishers across the spectrum, both small to large. We do great with the large customers, but I really see us being able to remove that barrier of right now we have a 10,000 page view limit, mainly just because it keeps our support professionals from having their hair fall out, and also has some policy implications, allows us to kind of like better work around people that might be fraudsters or something like that, bad actors. But we've got a lot of scale in place now that's going to allow us to kind of mitigate that. And so my goal is to have us be a platform that not only provides all of these things to publishers, but provides access to this technology to everyone, democratizes it, and really be able to help independent, smaller publishers that are tasked with growing inside of an environment that's growingly complex, extract the maximum value of revenue for their content, and also give them a true north in terms of how do you basically grow in this modern environment. We think video is a big part of that. We've recently added a video player so that people can get off of YouTube yet still have their video indexed in search, which is about 20% of all video views on YouTube already. So this is a big opportunity, we think, and also a big opportunity for revenue. And so, I think you'll continue to see us add objective SEO tools. I think you'll see us make optimizing your site's revenue with Ezoic in terms of ads and how you set it up a lot more intuitive and simple. And then I think you'll also see us be able to really open up the platform for all publishers to be able to benefit from all the things that we have here. And we already talked about the core web vitals and speed. So, I really see us being something that is leveraged by a growing population of publishers. I would imagine a scenario in the future in which not a single publisher wouldn't benefit from using something on the Ezoic platform. And we've designed it so that there's not a single publisher on the planet that couldn't use us for something if they didn't want to. So that's sort of the vision, and that's what we have in store.
Cool. Well, yeah. Well, I wish you all the best for that mission going forward. And I just want to say thank you very much for joining us on the show today. You started very early. We started for the listeners. It was 7:30 when we started the show for Tyler. So 7:30 in the morning. So you had to get up early. But So thanks again, and really appreciate your time.
No worries. Thanks for having me on, Mark. Over here in California, we're always behind the rest of the world, so you got to get up early. And I appreciate you having me on and letting me communicate with everybody. I hope the information isn't too dense. I'm in favor of giving people the information, and sometimes you got to hear it a few times before it really sinks in. But hopefully, there's something in there that you picked out that was valuable. And thanks once again, Mark. It's been a lot of fun.
Cool. Thanks, Tyler. Thanks again for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed the show. If you're listening to the podcast version of this episode, please subscribe on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Please rate and review, as this will allow us to grow our audience and create more shows like this one. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel and click on the bell to be the first to know about any new episodes that we release. Until the next episode, goodbye.